Tom Cotton, a Republican of Arkansas, made a jaw-dropping claim about mass incarceration this week. He said, the claim that too many criminals are being jailed, that there is over-incarceration, ignores an unfortunate fact. For the vast majority of crimes, a perpetrator is never identified or arrested, let alone prosecuted, convicted, and jailed. If anything, we have an under-incarceration problem. Wow. Deep theory there, bro. All right, so let me give you some facts here before we continue. There are 2.3 million Americans in jails, prisons, and juvenile correction facilities. With less than 5% of the planet's population, America has more than 20% of its prison population. And my favorite fact of all time, there are more people in U.S. prisons today than Stalin had in his gulags at their height. That's unbelievable. So we have more people locked up than in literal totalitarian police states. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. But this idiot's like, the incarceration problem is the opposite. We have an under-incarceration problem. Now understand, is there a grain of truth in what he's saying? Yes, there's a little grain of truth. And that grain of truth is, perhaps sometimes we don't lock up the right people. So, serious crimes go unpunished, whether it's rape or assault or murder or manslaughter or whatever the case is. Or grand larceny, shit like that. But the real thing we should do is, obviously have our police focus on the right crimes and try to lock up the right people and do none of the shit that's locking up a gigantic chunk of the people today, namely enforcing ridiculous drug laws. There's so many non-violent drug criminals locked up, and a non-violent drug criminal is indeed not at all a criminal. The idea that it's like, oh, I didn't do anything violent, but I did a substance, or I sold a substance. Why would anybody call that a criminal? That's like saying the cashier at the CVS, when you checked out and bought some Bud Light, that dude's a criminal because he sold you a substance. That's an intoxicating substance. In fact, that's a substance that's more dangerous than marijuana. Should the cashier be locked up for selling that to you? Should the CEO of Budweiser be locked up for making alcohol? Should you be locked up for drinking it? Should you be locked up for drinking coffee, for Red Bull, when you go to the doctor and they give you Xanax because you say you have anxiety? That's a drug. Should the doctor be locked up because he's a drug salesman? Should you be locked up for taking it? No, with certain drugs, we go, oh, that one, totally cool. Like, it's just baked into our minds, this ridiculous, preposterous double standard of, well, that one, yeah, lock up people for that one. Why? Because we've been doing it for so long, so do it. That doesn't mean it makes sense. That does not mean it makes sense. It's been like this for so long. Why wouldn't you lock up for somebody for smoking weed? Because it doesn't make sense to do that. The fuck? We now know we have Nixon administration officials who came out and said, oh yeah, by the way, the whole purpose behind the drug war was to control the undesirables. We knew, the Nixon White House knew, the blacks ain't gonna ever like us, and the white liberals, the hippies, ain't gonna ever like us. So what do? Control those populations. How do you do it? You can't just lock somebody up for being black or being a hippie. So criminalize the lifestyle. Hey, some black people smoke weed. Make weed illegal. Lock them up if they smoke weed. Hey, hippies do all kinds of drugs. LSD, shrooms, various hallucinogenics, marijuana, all that stuff. Lock them up too. So you criminalize the lifestyle to lock up as many black people and white liberals, hippies as you can, and then you pretend it's all about morality. And it's all about, oh, man, breaking a horrible law here. Look at this. He just had a substance. Meanwhile, these same assholes are pulling flasks out of their jackets and drinking up. Well, you're doing a substance. That one doesn't count, because I say so. What the fuck is this? But Tom Cotton, in his infinite, profound stupidity that drips and oozes from his pores, he's like, yeah, under-incarceration problem. No, if we locked up more of the right people for rape and assault and murder and robbery and all that stuff, and we released all the non-violent drug offenders, Well, we would still have a net giant decrease in the prison population. And that makes sense. And that's the right way to go. Now, this is the point where people turn around and they go, yeah, but see, this is why you're a stupid liberal, is that you think we could just release these people from prison and then there's not going to be a spike in crime. In fact, I know this is Bill O'Reilly's response. I've seen him give this response to liberal guests before. They go, look, Bill, we have mass incarceration, whether or not you realize it, and a lot of it is over drug crimes. First, he just denies that it's over drug crimes. No, nobody gets locked up for drugs. Fuck are you talking about? Have you seen the laws? Do you see the arrest numbers? No, nobody gets locked up. But then they pivot to the argument of, well, if you release all these people anyway, there's going to be so many more crimes. It's going to be a giant crime spike. How do you not know this, stupid liberal? Well, interesting that he would say that because we have some news here coming out of California that going to make Bill O'Reilly's head go. So they explain here. After California's prison population reached the crisis stage of overcrowding, with some prisons at 300% capacity, the state in 2011 began to parole thousands of inmates to their original counties. Within 15 months, more than 27,500 inmates had been realigned from state prisons to county jails or to parole in what was called an act of mass forgiveness unprecedented in U.S. history. This led to the understandable fear that suddenly returning thousands of convicts to the streets would cause a spike in crime. It hasn't happened. So a study from the American Society of Criminology concluded, and I quote, an astounding 17% reduction in the size of the California prison population had no effect on aggregate rates of violent or property crime. Let me repeat. No effect. A 17% decrease in the size of the jails and the prisons. No effect. No effect. So, how do I put this kindly? You're wrong. You're incorrect. When you talk about releasing nonviolent drug criminals, which, by the way, of course, they go through the paperwork, they pick the people who it makes the most sense to release. Who does it always make the most sense to release? Nonviolent drug offenders. So when you release those people, there's not a spike in crime because, newsflash, they're not really criminals. They're not really doing anything wrong. So for Tom Cotton to go out there and arrogantly and pompously say, well, we have an under-incarceration problem. Well, I guess you're just denying those facts that I laid out for you. 2.3 million Americans locked up, 5%, less than 5% of the planet's population, more than 20% of the prison population. Unbelievable, and more people in U.S. prisons than in Stalin's gulags. If you ignore all of that, then sure, I guess you have a point. And if you ignore the fact that, sure, we could lock up more actual criminals, and by the way, take the limited attention span and energy that law enforcement has and focus it on that, we can lock up those people and release the people who are not really criminals, and we'd all be better off. But no, because in this simpleton's mind, his answer is just, under-incarceration problem. He's like a curmudgeonly grandpa with zero facts, zero information, zero data, talking off his gut, because I believe my gut. But your gut is, quite literally, full of shit.